Welcome to Living Lit, where conversations spark inspiration to live in truth. Journey together with us to explore what it means to live a liturgical life and walk in the truth of our faith. Let's instill a culture in our hearts, homes, families, and world, living a life cooperating with and walking alongside our Lord. I'm Robin Brueggemann. Let's be a light, share the light, shine the light, and live lit. Well, welcome back for another great episode of Living Lit, our lit family. So today I have a repeat, very special guest. I have Katie Bogner with me today. So Katie Bogner is a Catholic school teacher from Central Illinois who is passionate about equipping parents, catechists, and teachers to share the beauty and truth of Christ and his church with children. She is the author of 5 books, including All About Lent and Holy Week, sharing the seasons of repentance and salvation with children. She shares hundreds of free resources for teaching the faith on her website at looktohimandberadiant.com, which is one of my absolute favorite places to get Catholic resources. So Katie, welcome back to Living Lit.
Hi, Robin. Thanks so much for having me again. I love being a repeat guest. It's so fun.
I do too. You have played such an important role in my life as a mom. With the resources that you have made available through the years. You are like an OG blogger, right?
I mean, I was working on some updating some archives, getting ready for Lent because we all have that on the brain right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the blog is 15 years old.
Wow,
15.
that is awesome.
So that's kind of crazy. But yeah, so I don't know about OG, but it's been around for quite a while.
You are awesome. Like, your resources are amazing. I was telling Casey, our producer behind the scenes here, about it because it's something that I have used so much as a mom. As a DRE, when I was a director of religious education, I have used it as a catechist, as a teacher, and I love it. And you have resources for just about anything you can imagine in the faith world, and they're beautiful because you're artistic. So thank you. And you make them available for free, which is just really a treat. So thank you. So that is at looktohimandberadiant.com. So will you share a little bit about yourself, Katie?
Yeah, sure. So I am a Catholic school teacher. So I currently teach 6th through 8th grade religion. Before that, I taught 5th grade. We were just talking a little bit about 5th grade. I just love the middle school years. I know a lot of people think I'm crazy, but they're really special. They're very challenging too. Every age and stage, right, has its blessings and its challenges. And then I taught in public school for a few years before that too. But I'm actually a public school kid, raised like pre-K all the way through college. And when I came back after graduation, I got a job in my local public school system. And then my pastor, it's a long story, but my pastor asked me to be the DRE. It took me a while to say yes, but I did eventually. And so I started at my tiny parish doing all the DRE things for preschool all the way through adult education. And so that's where the blog was born, because I felt really passionate. I had had a wonderful experience at my Newman Center in college and just really wanted to share the faith in an engaging way and make it accessible, right? Like, most of our parish catechists are volunteers, and our teachers are busy, and moms and dads are pulled in so many different directions. And so I wanted to make resources that were good and true and beautiful, but also really easy to implement. And that's why they're free. I wanted them to be at someone's fingertips. So you can just click and print and put them to use at your kitchen table or in your classroom or in your CCD room, whatever it might be. So that's a little bit about me and how I got to here.
Thank you so much. So you are on today because you have another book releasing. I am so excited. So I have all your books up until this one and absolutely love them. And the last time you were on Living Lit, you had just released your All About Advent book here, and which I'm going to hold up. This is the Advent one. And so that is an amazing book, and you made the little twin to it for Lent, the companion. So yes, if you're listening to Living Lit on podcast, you may want to check us out on YouTube so you can see Katie is holding up her brand new book, All About Lent and Holy Week. So I am just tickled and so excited because the All About Advent one is my absolute favorite. If I could only have one book in my house at Advent, it's that one because it has everything you need. And so you've done it again for Lent. It is awesome. And you have so generously and graciously invited me into your journey of getting to preview your book behind the scenes. So I've been getting to see that on the computer. It's just beautiful and lovely and just packed full of amazing goodness to help anybody, actually of all ages, get through Lent and Holy Week. And it's just absolutely beautiful. So I have invited Katie on to share about this book. So Katie, will you kind of tell us, was this in the works the whole time? Like, did you know when you did the Advent book that there was going to be a companion?
We did. We did. It was the plan all along. So, and the series probably isn't done. I'll just say that we'll see exactly where it takes us, because we've changed directions a little bit, but it was always a plan to make at least Advent and Lent. And so that's why, so when you actually see the books, you'll notice that they are very similar in style. They use the same fonts, the same layout. They even have some of the same like titles for the sidebars. So they really are meant to be companions and work side by side, because the seasons of Lent and Advent have so many similarities, right? They run parallel. They're seasons of preparation that lead to times of celebration, and all of them are part of, they're leading to the Paschal mystery and telling us why Jesus came. So Advent, as you know, we're waiting for the Messiah, and then Lent is really the reason why the Messiah came. So yeah, they were always meant to come together in a pair. So not that it was a big secret, but it has been kind of fun that as soon as we release the Advent book, I think the most common question I have ever received about any of the 5 books, probably times 10, is, okay, when can I get the Lent book? And we're like, okay, well, give us a year. Like, it's coming. We're working on it.
Which is incredibly impressive to come out with the little companion, not little, but the same size companion that fast. Like, I was so impressed when I got your email to, preview it. I was like, oh my goodness, like, absolutely amazing. So I am just tickled to that you've come out with this. So I think we'll start by talking about, so Lent isn't typically everyone's favorite season, but it is time to start talking about and thinking about Lent. So how do you think we can make Lent more approachable for kids?
Yeah, I know we were just talking about Advent. I don't think anybody ever dreads Advent, right? Like,
Right?
even kids. Like, it's the season of, like candles and lights and decorating and preparing. And it's also, it goes by too fast. I mean, in my opinion, I love Advent. So it always seems to go too fast, and then suddenly it's Christmas. Lent, on the other hand, is a little bit harder sometimes to look forward to. Because it's a season of sacrifice. It's a season that's meant to kind of refine and purify us. And from a kid's perspective, if you ask them about what Lent is for, they're like, oh, I have to give stuff up, like whatever that might look like in their household. And so I think one of the things we can do is talk about the importance of how that sacrifice is an opportunity for us to walk with Jesus in the wilderness. And that's a major kind of like theme, both in imagery and in language, that we use in the All About Lent book. Was that this isn't just this like, okay, well, buckle up, everybody, you're going to have to do hard stuff during Lent. It's more so that we're walking with Jesus in the wilderness, and we're kind of being refined. We're strengthening our prayer. We're being generous with our time and our talent and our treasure. We're making sure that we're detaching ourselves from the things that either we shouldn't be attached to anyway, or maybe from the things that don't matter as much as our relationship with God. And so I think if we issue an invitation and also a challenge, because kids, they really do like to be challenged. They like to have goals. They like to know that they're capable of doing awesome things. They love being generous and having like a service-oriented heart. And so I think if we issue it as a challenge and as an invitation, it really is much more appealing. And especially also, just to come back to that idea that Lent is a season of preparation. We are in a season of Lent. We are in this waiting time while we're here on earth, but really it's supposed to be leading us to the promised land, to Easter, to Passover, and to eventually our time in heaven. And so when you keep your eye on that goal, that also really helps too.
Yeah, I love how you bring that up, because I think it's easy to fall into the, oh, Lent is just this long, if I can make it this long. And then quite often too, like whatever if we've chosen to fast from something or give something up, we're quick to be like, okay, and then we pick up, whether it's we gave up chocolate, we quick pick it back up again, or sometimes a bad habit, it can easily sneak back in after we've purged it out. But really how Lent is meant to like help us become more refined and closer to the Lord, and allowing more space for him, and then to just keep going further and further instead of like going forward, going backwards. So I love how you bring in the bigger picture of it this season, that really is just drawing us closer to our Lord and in our faith. So that's so beautiful. And your book is such a beautiful way of inviting people of all ages. So would you consider it well, would you consider it a children's book? Because I, as a mom, as a woman, as a grown Catholic woman, I think this is great. I don't think it's just for kids.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear you say that. I would say, yes, we designed it for children. I mean, it is in the subtitle, sharing the seasons of repentance and salvation with children. But a big philosophy of mine is it really drives me crazy when people water stuff down when they're trying to teach kids the faith. They are completely capable, sometimes more than you and I, of really understanding and grasping the great truths of our faith. We just need to give it to them in bite-sized pieces and appropriate language.
Yeah.
And so in that token, the nice thing about writing in that type of style, where we're really fully sharing the fullness of the truth with them, is that therefore it's appealing and relevant for everyone. I have heard, which has been one of the coolest things about the Advent book, is several people have contacted me and said that they actually use it with their RCIA class or OCIA class, because it's such a great way to hit on the traditions of the season and the why behind what we do, but in like bite-sized pieces. So that's really cool. So really, I mean, that's really the goal of all of my resources, including my books, is they're really for the whole family, for the whole classroom. They're meant to teach the teacher right alongside the students. And so I'm glad to hear that you've gained something from them too and think that they're approachable for an adult.
Absolutely. And I love how, like, I honestly, like, looking through the Advent book, which I have, and then looking through the new Lent book that you had sent, I cannot think of anything that isn't in there that could or should be. Like, I think you have covered everything, from the things that we kind of immediately maybe think of with Lent to things that we maybe didn't even realize was going on. And it's like, holy smokes, there's so much information and beauty and, like I said, truth and just all these traditions and why we do what we do during Lent in this beautiful season without it being overwhelming. Like, I don't look at it and go,
I'm glad
oh
to hear
gosh.
that.
I'm just like, wow, like everything. Like, you guys really have just done a beautiful job of getting it all in one place. And I think that's what I love about your books for both of those very special sacred seasons is it's just all there. It's like this one-stop shop within one book. So beautiful. So how can a family use your new book to enter into the sacred season of Lent? Like, how would you recommend somebody use your book once they get it?
So for a family, it's really not meant. So I know that not everyone can see it if you're not watching on YouTube, but the books are about they're about 55 pages, somewhere right in there. Kind of depends on how you count all of the different things. So about 50 pages. And so they're not meant to be read in one sitting. It's not like a picture book that you're just going to sit down and read one time and then put back on the shelf. Rather, it's kind of broken up into short chapters that are maybe 2 or 3 pages. And so one of the things that I would recommend is to take one of those short chapters and maybe you read it together at the dinner table or before bedtime or while you're stuck waiting in the school pickup line, you're sitting in the van. And the nice thing is that every chapter has kind of like a main text that sort of explains the overall topic, like the Stations of the Cross, for example, or fasting, or what the liturgical year is and how Lent fits into that. But then within the page, so like I'm going to show you real quick. So here's a page about the 40 days of Lent, but then it goes into the whole rhythm of the liturgical year and how it tells the story of Jesus's life. So then there's also sidebars that go through the liturgical calendar, and then here's some different hymns we sing during Lent, what the meaning of the different liturgical colors are. So the cool thing is that if you've got little ones, you can just read the main text and maybe look at a couple of the pictures, and then you're good to go. Mm-hmm. If you've got older kids, you can go into more of those finite details that are going to make more sense and make some connections for them. And then what's cool too is then you can even go a little further. Like on the next page after that, it talks about Fish Fry Fridays and why we eat fish as Catholics and why Catholic parishes host these awesome fish fries and how that fits in with Lenten traditions. So then maybe then the next follow-up conversation is, as you read the section on fasting and abstinence, is okay, what do you think you could give up and take up this Lent? So even though it was only a couple of pages long, it should hopefully lead to a conversation as a family that actually can be applied in that child's life. And then you put the book away. Like, you're not going to read the whole thing at once. Mm-hmm. Then there's a chapter, 2 pages on Ash Wednesday. So maybe after Ash Wednesday Mass, you read that pages to help the kids understand why they're going to walk out with a dirt smudge on their forehead and what that has to do with anything. So really, that's kind of the idea, is that you can use it in bits and pieces throughout the whole season. Holy Week takes up a huge chunk of the book just because there's so much to share about Holy Week. And so that one, you really could use it like literally every day of Holy Week, and especially the Sacred Triduum. But other than that, I really hope that the book ends up like sitting open on, on the dining room table, or it's stuck in the console of the van and it just kind of gets pulled out throughout the season.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to mention too that you have, and I'm not sure, have you decided how the resources, so you have some additional resources that will be available. How, like, can you tell us how those will be available
Sure.
or in what way?
So, from what I understand, because I haven't actually gone through the pre order process, I'm pretty sure, excuse me so much, I'm pretty sure that if you have pre-ordered the book through the St. Paul Center, which is our publisher, they've actually already started sending things out, which is really fun.
Oh,
So
okay.
Shari and I are both, so the illustrator, Shari Van Vranken of Catholic Paper Goods, we haven't mentioned her yet. She is like I wrote the words, but she's the one who made the book beautiful. She did all of the illustrations and the design. She's the one who was able to make the content flow. She's just such a treasure. You may not know her name, but she's the one. She's illustrated like well over 300 saints that she, posts on social media on their feast days. She has an incredible Catholic shop with so many downloads. So anyway, so Shari and I were very passionate about Catholic education, and so I think we've made somewhere around 20 free printables
Mm-hmm.
that go along with the book, and they match precisely, like they use the
Yeah.
illustrations from the book. You've got your pretzel
Yep.
recipe. Look at that.
No, me too. Yep. Yep.
So they
So
match the illustrations and the
amazing.
content from the book. And so that's a
Stations of
Stations
the
of the Cross booklet. So
Cross.
some of them are a little bit more interactive.
Yeah.
Some are more of a coloring page, but I'm a big fan of making sure we embed the content in there. And
Mm-hmm.
so the content is included then on the coloring page to kind of make them a little more educational. So
Mm-hmm.
there are some that you get as a freebie for ordering through the St. Paul Center. But then I also have been working on adding those in on my blog, so there'll be even more that people can access and download. So everything from a recipe for making Lenten pretzels to I love the 40 ways for 40 days. Like
Yes.
here's 40 things you can
Love
do
that.
during Lent. Sometimes for kids, it's really hard to sustain one particular Lenten sacrifice. And so instead, post that thing up on your fridge and work your way through and try. There's different types of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving that are approachable for a child or a family. So I really like that one. Like, I think I'm
Yeah.
going to do that one this Lent.
Is that one that is available always or not always on your website? Because I know you actually have really incredible, awesome Lent resources aside from the ones that complement the book on
Mhm.
your website. So is a 40 ways for 40 days something that's usually on
That one,
there?
it is on my website now. It's
Okay.
actually based on a very old, like probably 10 or 12-year old resource where I had this like pray fast give foldable where it had little tabs
Yes,
that you could pull
I
out.
I did that at
So
home with
this
my
is the much
kiddos.
more polished and easier to implement plan because you don't have to cut anything out. You just
Yeah.
print it and can
Yeah.
hand it out. So much more appropriate for like a classroom, for example.
Yeah.
So
And
that one is on my, so if people, by the time the podcast is
mhm.
out, if people go to my website, they'll be able to access all of those for free. So
Okay, and I will link that. I'll link your website, and then we will also link the St. Paul Center, who is carrying your book, so people can
mhm.
order your book too.
Yes,
But the 40
absolutely.
ways for 40 days, I have done that with my kids for years, and it really has made Lent more, I don't want to say doable, but it doesn't make it as long, and it's something that we can even do together as a family.
Mhm.
You know, some of the things you have is like attend Stations of the Cross at your parish, read a story from the gospel before bed, give an offering in your parish collection, do an extra chore without being asked, fast from TV for a day, fast from music for a day. So all these little things that you can focus on during the day. So I absolutely love those things. So how would you, I know you, like you've mentioned, you try to make your resources available for like the mom, but also for like teachers. So how could somebody use your book in a classroom setting, whether maybe they, teach in the Catholic school system, or maybe, like Religious Ed, they have
Mhm.
kiddos. So how would you recommend using your book and resources in that sort of a situation?
For sure, yeah. So I mean, most religion textbooks, of course, they're definitely going to have a chapter on the liturgical year, and hopefully they have a chapter on Lent, but it might not have a lot in it. And I think we can do more for our kids, right? Like we live the liturgical year as Catholics. Like this is how we like live and move and breathe together. as a church. And so I feel like we can enter into the season more than just like reading a chapter in a book, you know? And so if a teacher or a catechist or, you know, a parish leader, DRE had my book and the resources that go with it, I really think kind of like I mentioned before, it could be something that throughout, even if you only see the kids once a week, I mean, that means you probably see them hopefully 5 or 6 times during the season of Lent. So maybe you can pull out some different aspects, like maybe the first week you're together, you talk about, well, what is Lent and why is it 40 days, and read that the section on the liturgical year and Ash Wednesday. And then maybe another week you talk about the tradition of praying the Stations of the Cross and why those are so important during Lent. And then, like we've already mentioned, we pretty much have a resource that goes along with all of those major things. So once you read the chapter in the book, then you can pull out those little Stations of the Cross booklets. The kiddos can make their own. You can walk over to your church and walk the Stations of the Cross. I love the Stations of the Cross. I think a lot of families or teachers are intimidated by them because they feel like you have to be silent and they take at least a half an hour, if not longer. And that doesn't have to be true. Like you could take your kindergartners over and just walk in front of the station and say the name of the station. It would be beautiful to teach them the "We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you" prayer, and then pause and then walk to the next station. Like you could pray all of the Stations of the Cross in 5 to 7 minutes. And little ones love that. They love getting to walk the church. They love getting to see whether it's statues or images of the stations up close. So that's something I would highly encourage a teacher to do. But yeah, there's a lot of resources that you certainly could take, and whether you're discussing them in the classroom and then sending them home, or you are, you know, something you're implementing actually in your classroom, like praying the stations together. There's ways to pray and fast and give in a classroom too. You know, maybe you fast from, you know, you can't use the mechanical pencil sharpener this week. We're going to use the regular mechanical or the regular pencil sharpener. You know what I mean? Like I know it sounds silly, but sometimes it's just making a sacrifice together and doing it for a reason. Like, you know, we're going to fast from the fancy pencil sharpener. We're going to use the old one. But while we're doing that, while we're sharpening our pencil, we're going to say a Hail Mary for all the seminarians in our diocese or whatever it might be. Okay.
Yeah.
Like it sounds really silly, but if you're helping the kids be intentional and understand that sacrifice has purpose, it means something. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be big. It really can make a big difference in their prayer life and how they view fasting and sacrifice going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And along with the Stations of the Cross, I would encourage families to even do that, especially with little kiddos. I've done that through the years in the past too, where you know, or there's times where I felt like we couldn't make it through the whole stations at church on a Friday night. We do them at home, usually is what we do, but we have visited the churches and, you know, and sometimes it's even if you live in a city that has more than one Catholic church, you could even pop into the other one or another one and visit the stations. And yeah, it's just walking through and just observing in a prayerful way is just absolutely a beautiful opportunity. So I would encourage young families to even give that a try too. And you could go when it fits, you know, whether it's between nap time and supper or whatever. So I absolutely love that.
Not 7 p.m. on a Friday night, right?
Right.
Not always
don't
the best
go then.
time for a little kid.
Unless you want to like attend it with a parish, which we of course always encourage people to participate with their parish family. But sometimes when that's not possible because of the season of life you're in, there are ways to get creative to do these really beautiful traditions on the side. So as you know, like living lit, lit is short for living the liturgical year as well as living in church. And I know living in church, yes, living in truth. But I know a strong passion of yours is living the liturgical year, which you've brought up a couple times now. So how do your books then help, you know, how do they work together to help families live the liturgical year? Now, I know you've already mentioned, like you show the layout of a liturgical year, which is so helpful, I think, for families to see that. So how would you like explain to people how this will help bring the life of a liturgy like alive, but how they can like actively, physically even do some participation with living the church year?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a big question. I think that it's really important for us as Catholics to know that we're like invited into this liturgical year so that we can fast and feast together. That we, you know, every Sunday is not the same. Every season is not the same. And there's a reason for that because we're retelling the story of Jesus's life, death, passion, and resurrection. And we're following in his footsteps in that way. And so one of the beautiful things about, I know sometimes people hear the liturgical year, and maybe it's a carryover of the OG blog movement, as we were talking at the beginning of the episode, and they think of the liturgical year like, oh, yes, that's like, you know, cute crafts and special snacks on saints' feast days. And I'm like, well, that's super fun, but that's not at all, or not the only thing by far of what we're doing. really what we're doing is we're like living and breathing the church year together as a church and as a parish. And then that pours over into family life. And so one of the things that I think would be a beautiful effect of reading books like mine or any other books that have to do with seasons of the liturgical year is you're helping open up your children's eyes to notice what's happening in the liturgy so that they can more actively participate in it. I know during Advent, it's real easy to notice like, oh, hey, there's 4 more candles up in the front of the church and 3 of them are purple and 1 are pink. Did they run out of purple? What happened? There's some really obvious things, but once they start paying attention, maybe during Lent, they'll notice like, oh, we don't really have flowers in front of the altar. Like they're singing some songs that we don't usually sing. They've, oh my gosh, during the sacred trip, they took everything off the altar. The altar cloth's gone, the candles are gone. Why did they do that? So the more they know about the intent of the season and what we're preparing for or what we're celebrating, they're going to start to notice more with their 5 senses in the actual liturgy. Like everything should be leading to and coming from the Mass. And so if my silly book and my coloring pages can help a kid better recognize what is happening during the sacred Mass, like that's a win. Like I'm done. Like that's all I needed to do. So yeah, I think that would be a really beautiful thing if families could remember that liturgical living is not just about, meals and crafts, although those are super fun. It really should be all pouring from and leading back to the Mass.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you talked about that, because that's really the source of it. And really it's us mimicking the life of the church, and Lent, and I mean any season really, but Lent really also is an invitation to mimic the church. Like, church seems a little bit more bare. Like we do that at home, where we kind of strip down some of the decorations that are usually up. It looks a little more barren. Bringing in the color of purple. People notice the change from green to that really deep purple color. I think there, and like you said, no flowers maybe for a while. Like the music is different, and I think even in your book, you even have the covering of if I remember right, the statues, right?
On Passion Sunday,
yes.
yeah.
And I think and that's definitely something that kids are noticing, adults are noticing, and many adults are like, "What?" Like, I know that, I think that happens during Lent, but why are we doing that? Where you talk about that in the book. And that's something like we have done now for years in our home, as in we go through and we cover up the crucifixes and our little statues. And it's been a beautiful way to invite our kids into part of that, and just on the Lent journey. So there's so many opportunities that we have to bring our faith into the home from church, from Mass. So I love how you address that, and how it isn't, it's so much more than what people think it is, liturgical living. It is just taking these holy pauses into what is going on in the life of Christ, in the life of the church. So I just absolutely love that. But then there are these beautiful traditions, and then some that we can bring in, which you do address in the book. So do you have some favorites that you have in the book, or that maybe were they ones that you grew up at? Like, did you grow up living the liturgical year like a lot?
Not at all. Not at all, actually. That probably is good for me to say as well. So I grew up, I was baptized as a baby and grew up going to Mass every single Sunday. Praise the Lord. So grateful to my parents for that strong foundation of faith that they gave my sisters and I. And we prayed before meals. And like I said, we didn't miss Sunday Mass. My parents volunteered as CCD teachers. But to be perfectly honest, that was pretty much it. So my dad's a farmer. I know we've talked about this before, Robin. So we had a really good, strong moral foundation, but we did not, I didn't have an Advent wreath on my kitchen table growing up. I don't think we ever prayed a family rosary. And again, I'm not knocking my parents. That wasn't the formation that they had. And my mom was an adult convert, so she had never really experienced any of that. So I think that honestly, social media, and as we've talked about before, it can be a great gift, is really what opened my eyes to how you could take the life of the church and also bring it into the life of your home, that you could have this representation in the domestic church and like you said, kind of mimic what is happening. And so, no, I didn't grow up with this at all. I think really coming into my classroom and being able to share the liturgical year with my students made me think more about how can I, like you said, so I'm in my classroom right now. I actually still have up our Christmas lights around the room because it's February and it's dark and it's a nice little cheery thing, but I'll take those down before Ash Wednesday, so there are certain things that I'll kind of strip down and par down in my classroom. I'll get out I'll redo our little prayer space and put a purple cloth up, and we'll have a crucifix that'll be prominent in center there. So I think what pulled me in was trying to recreate the liturgical year within my classroom and invite my students to follow along. So I guess all of that to say, like, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have done this growing up. You don't have to even know what you're doing right now, but everyone can start doing this right now. Like, you can do liturgical living in your home. You're not going to do it wrong. You're not going to mess up. Just pick one or two things that you feel comfortable with. And that's the beautiful thing of like our book All About Lent, or the gift of Google, is that you can figure out how to answer those questions. You know, you decide you're going to cover the crucifixes with purple fabric or purple tissue paper, you know, during Passiontide, and your kiddos ask you, well, why are we doing that? You can find out. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out and I'll let you know. So yeah, don't ever be afraid. It's not too late to start. It's not complicated. You can walk right into it wherever you're ready to.
I love that. So true. And really, like, say, if someone just takes your book, they will need to do nothing except for just read it. I mean, seriously, read it, look at the pictures for yourself with your kiddos. It's going to walk you through everything. So if you could pick out from your book, like I said, it literally has everything and then some without being overwhelming. But if you could just pick out a couple traditions that you would like to highlight real quick on, like, for our listeners. Ooh, like, okay, I know that's really hard, isn't it? And the other thing I want to encourage people is, if, like you've mentioned, you don't have to know anything about liturgical living or, you know, celebrating these traditions. You could come from doing absolutely zero and then just look through the book. And honestly, the Lord is going to have something jump out at you that is, he's going to be like, oh, and you're just going to know, oh my goodness, let's start doing this in our family, in our home, in our life, right? And you don't need any experience. It's just going to show you exactly what to do. But if you could just like highlight a couple, what would you just to encourage families and listeners right now?
Okay, well, while you were talking, I flipped through and I feel like if you would ask me tomorrow, I probably would pick two different things. So I just found two. Okay. So one of them, I'm just going to go hardcore right off to start with. So there's this, I'm going to show you the picture. There's this beautiful illustration of the prodigal son that Shari drew. She like really wanted this like joyous reunion of the son coming home and his father coming out to meet him. And in that chapter of the book, I write about the beautiful story of the father seeking out his lost son, of, you know, the merchant looking for the lost pearl, the shepherd looking for the lost sheep, and how our Father desires to be reconciled with us. So this whole little short chapter is about repentance, how we can turn away from the ways that we've walked away from God, and conversion, how we can bring our heart back to him. And then it goes through some steps for how to go to confession. So this is, again, I'm going hardcore right away, but I would totally invite your listeners to consider, if you have little ones who maybe are not old enough to receive the sacrament of confession, maybe make it a point this Lent, or no matter how old your kids are, to really take a moment and maybe practice a little bit that idea of like apologizing to one another as a family. We all mess up. We're all short-tempered. We all make mistakes. So apologizing to one another, and also practicing how to graciously receive an apology. Because if kids are modeled that in the family, then they're going to understand better how God can forgive them too. And then if your kids are old enough to go to confession, that doesn't have to be something that just happens like when they're in second grade and then right before they're confirmed. Like, maybe make it a point to even schedule it. Look at your parish calendar, figure out when confession is being offered and when it works in your family schedule. Help your kids, you know, gently and with age appropriate resources prepare, and then go to confession as a family. Let them see you know, the parents go to confession, let them see their older siblings go. I think that there could be no greater gift, no greater thing you could do as a family.
Absolutely. So
that was not all cutesy and fun, but that's the best one.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And your website is so easy to use that a person could even just go go to your website, to look to him and be radiant.com, and even just type in the little search box, you know, reconciliation, confession, and your resources even will pull up for that if it's been a while and you need a refresher. So absolutely. So what's another one that you're thinking of? Do you have another thought?
Okay, the other one that I pulled out was, this one is, I know it's going to be kind of hard to see
Holy Week.
On the screen. I would need to back way up. So this is a really cool illustration that Shari made for Holy Week. And so this is also, like, you'll see, I'm sure if you've been on the blog a lot, some of these things, like the ideas are familiar. So I have like a Holy Week journal that I put out. It was actually during 2020 when we couldn't go to Mass. And so like pulled out, so there's something for every single day of Holy Week, from Palm Sunday all the way through Easter Sunday. And the cool thing is that every single Holy Week, no matter what liturgical cycle we're in, we hear the same gospel stories. And this is one of the only weeks of the entire, of the entire liturgical year where we're literally walking with Jesus. Like, we're doing what he did on those days that week. And so this page in the book outlines and gives you the gospel and then just a really, really short summary. Like, this is what happened, and then a practical challenge. So for example, on Palm Sunday, it has the gospel reading, and then it has a little short explanation of what the people did when Jesus came into Jerusalem. And then the little practical challenge is today, sing a song or listen to some music that praises the Lord. So this page, if you just had this open and read the gospel, whether you do it, in the morning before school or do it before bed or whenever it is, if you read the gospel and then did those little challenges each day, I think you would have an incredibly rich Holy Week. It would be kind of like going on a little retreat as a family, and it would be super easy. No prep, no supplies, don't have to do anything else. So those are my top two today. But if you ask me tomorrow, I would probably have another recommendation.
Well, I'm sure it was very hard to choose. If you asked me, I would have a hard time because everything is just so awesome in your book, and there's so much opportunity there for someone to just take it a step further in the faith life and just living the faith at home. It's just absolutely beautiful. But I do love that you pulled out Holy Week, because I think a lot of people can either think of just like, okay, aside from Easter, like Good Friday, or maybe they're thinking of Holy Thursday, but it's like, no, every single day, starting with Palm Sunday, there is a lot going on that you miss out on if you're not, like kind of just all you have to do is pay attention, honestly. And like in the readings, the church so beautifully just like has provided everything we need by just having it in our scripture for each day of the liturgical year. It's just awesome. So yeah, you've done a great job of bringing that to life. So Katie, this is amazing. And like I said earlier in the show, like if you could only have one Advent and one Lent book, these are the books to have. They're absolutely beautiful. Like I said, Shari she really did bring everything to life. It's beautiful. Like I think even for kids that can't read, like they're just looking at the pictures, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh my goodness, these are beautiful. As an adult woman, I am just drawn in. The artwork is just absolutely stunning, and it's just laid out so beautifully. So it really is the perfect companion to the other book, but your seasonal companion to have and then bring out year after year. So is there anything else, Katie, that you would like to add about the book itself or Lent that you would like to share before we head off?
Gosh, you've like encapsulated it so well, Robin. You've sold it so well. I don't know if there's anything else that I could say. I guess that's the last thing. I know we've kind of hit on it, but just to really say again that this is not a daily devotional. It's not oriented at all towards one particular age group. And it is definitely not something that you could only use one year. So don't feel like this is something you're going to get and kind of use up and then, put it away on the shelf and not pull it out. It would be a dream of mine if this is just kind of like an heirloom thing that like comes out in the book basket or on the dining room table every Lent, every year. So it really is something that is meant to be used over and over and over again.
For sure. I love that you said it's like an heirloom. Truly, this is an heirloom book that will get taken out, and then the kids would grow up being like, do you remember that Lent book or that Advent book that we followed and looked at? And it's a gift, a book that I want to then get like my kids and my grandkids, because it is just amazing. So thank you. I'm so thankful for people like you who the Lord has placed such special gifts in using the Lord has placed in you to bring to life for the rest of us. So thank you so much. So Katie's book is published by Emmaus Road Publishing, right? And then it is carried at the St. Paul Center is where you can purchase her book. And I will have a link to that in the show notes for you to order. And oh my goodness, guys, you will not regret buying this book. It is an absolute must for every household to have this book. Like, so strongly recommend it. So Katie, thank you so much for all you do and all you offer. Such a gift.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you.
Well, we'll be praying for you and the launch of the book, and I can't wait for other people to experience Lent with the help of your book this Lent. And I pray that you have a happy and holy Lent season.
You as well.
All right. Thanks for being here again, Katie. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
And then we'll see you next time, friends. Thanks for joining us today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Living Lit, and reach out with topics you'd like tackled at livinglit@sfcatholic.org. And be the light, shine the light, share the light, and live lit.